Kia ora and welcome to Cinema in Context, where we discuss all things film and the connections between. My name is Jeremy Downing.
I'm William Chen.
And I'm Sarah Watt.
And each month at Cinema in Context, we discuss two films, one current and one retrospective, with some connection. It could be the same director, the same actor, or a similar theme. This month, we are discussing The Mitchells vs. the Machines, a Netflix film which came out this year, and T2, Judgment Day, the second of the Terminator franchise, which came out 30 years ago, listeners. Wow. 30 years ago in 1991. The connection being that they are both films with a robot uprising, and there are some other connections as well, which I'm sure we'll get into. Most likely mummy-daddy issues, I'm going to say it. But yeah, that's our films, and I'm going to hand it over to William to give us a bit of an overview of one of these movies. William.
Alright, so guys, this month I watched the Sony Pictures Animation and Lord Middle Productions feature starring a creative young hero who people just don't get. They try to prove themselves to their distant father, a technophobe of sorts who loves his kid but is unsure about their direction in life. He's also a terrible communicator. However, when a tech-induced apocalypse threatens to swallow the land, father and child need to team up with other assorted weirdos voiced by comedy luminaries to destroy the evil central processor, with the climax centered on the dad desperately trying to use a computer. All of this is presented with eye-searing colours and a unique CG art style that really shows off SPA's knack for pushing the boundaries of CG animation. But enough about Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, everybody.
Oh my gosh!
Have you seen Cloudy,
No,
Sarah?
but I've heard it's terrific.
I know, I forced you to see it, Jeremy.
We did an episode. We did an episode on
an
the
episode.
Lego Movie too, and we had a guest star, Katie, my friend Katie.
Yeah, that's right.
Katie
That's right. Cloudy is awesome. And The Mitchells, it's from a lot of the same creative team as Into the Spider-Verse and some Sony people with Phil Lord and Chris Miller kind of helming the whole thing. It's a movie about a family trying to survive a robo-apocalypse with really, really, really colourful images just searing their way into your retinas.
Brilliant. And T2, not to be confused with another film we've talked about, which is T2 Trainspotting, which is a riff on this movie, or movie title. Terminator 2 is the, I believe, fourth film by James Cameron, because he would have done Terminator, the first one, Aliens, The Abyss, and then Terminator 2 Judgment Day.
Do we count Piranha 2 as part of this?
I did not count Piranha 2 as part of this, because he wasn't really involved in the directing of that. He just snuck in and edited it by night and then kind of got a credit at the end. I know my James Cameron films.
You do!
So Terminator 2 is the sequel to the grungy cyberpunk breakout film of the 1980s with a much larger budget. And it sees the lead of Arnold Schwarzenegger's character, the Terminator, shift in kind of tone and in motivation, going from the villain of the first movie to, spoiler alert, the hero of the second film. Sarah Connor, the lead of the first movie, she has sort of hung up her dresses and nightclub lifestyle and become this very hardened warrior planning for an apocalypse, and has been subsequently locked up in an institution for trying to blow up some sort of facility. And the other lead is young John Connor, played by Edward Furlong. And the film opens with the introduction of these three characters as well as the villain, and slowly weaves their stories together into what made the first Terminator great, a chase film that ends in a factory. And that's Terminator 2. I guess it's worth mentioning, and I've already slightly done it, that we will be spoilering both films. So if you haven't seen particularly the Terminator series, I would suggest pausing this episode, jump into a bit of cultural phenomenon, and come back. Just watch the first two and skip to the most recent one, Dark Fate, and you'll be sweet. But yeah, let's jump in. The Mitchells versus the Machines and T2 Terminator Judgment Day. Who wants to start?
I'll start. I think The Mitchells is a really interesting movie. I was really, really looking forward to this one. Hearing all the behind-the-scenes stuff and about how so much of the developments from Into the Spider-Verse, which we all went to see and generally really loved, funneling their way into just a new style of animation, and then seeing the story people behind it and the producers behind it. It's directed by Mike Rianda, who was one of the storyboard artists behind the, I don't know if you guys have seen the Disney show Gravity Falls.
No.
It's a wonderful show. It's kind of, if you can imagine, Twin Peaks meets X-Files meets Simpsons. That's Gravity Falls. Beautiful, weird little show. So a lot of the writing credit is from those guys. And then, of course, with Phil Lord and Chris Miller overseeing the whole thing and their brand of comedy stylings from Spider-Verse to Lego Movie to 21 Jump Street, seemed like just a match made in heaven. And so really interested and looking forward to it. I think the final product, it does have its highs and lows, but I'm super keen to hear what you guys have to say about it.
My biggest issue with this film, I think, is probably a bigger issue with the Netflix film creation in general, which it has all the pieces there, but there's a lack of discipline about how it's landing and how it's put together. And I think this is perhaps a real, example of where the studio system can help a film. I assume that a movie like this would usually go through rounds of focus groups, of test screenings, of re-edits, of reshoots, and we often criticize that process. I think we think, they're stepping on the creative's vision, but actually, this film feels to me like it really needed some of that work. The storyline I was appreciating, the main character, her kind of film nerdiness and the classic parental issues. Okay, all right, we've got some good primal storytelling going on. But it took a long time to set up that story. I think it took a good 20 minutes. And then it was sort of resolved within the first half of the movie. Like the daughter and the father, she says the thing, I love you, Dad, or I respect you, and thanks, daughter. And then there's still like another hour of this film to go.
Yeah, no, but isn't there the complication a little later on where he's watching the video, the CCTV or whatever it was, and captures her saying to her brother, I just said that to make him happy. You remember? And so then the dad's like, oh, she didn't really mean it, or... so they do complicate it again, but it's not a massive dramatic complication, right?
It feels just like
it's low stakes.
They're having to hash out. They've realised that they've resolved their issue, and we're like, oh, well, let's just kind of reintroduce it again. There's no development or growth, and so I just kind of got bored with it for that reason. Visually, it was really interesting. It definitely mashed a lot of styles and not always to great effect.
Not as well as how Spider-Verse did it, I think. Yeah, which, you have so much of the live action elements and the what they call Katie vision, where it's doodles and all these fantastic 2D elements layered on top. And you watch some of the making ofs, and every single frame is just poured over laboriously. And the craft is fantastic. But I do agree, Jeremy, like sometimes it feels just maybe a little too much.
When you say Katie vision, do you mean those were the bits that would appear to her left?
Yeah, that's right.
It's sort of like the angels on the shoulders, and as if they're her inner thoughts.
How she sees the world, like through her filmmaker's vision.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they did hire a not really an outsider, but a freelancer. Her name is Lindsay Olivares. And so she kind of just set this whole sort of visual styling in place. And everything was working around the very, very hand-drawn, doodling type, overlay on top of a CG world that is made to look imperfect as well. So there aren't, in terms of the family and the organic stuff, there aren't a lot of straight lines, right? Or edges, or things that are very, very cleanly textured. It's all rough and tumble, I guess, so we can have this comparison with the digital world, which is all about the gradients and the smoothness and the straight lines.
I liked all that. I really liked that merging. It's very 90s. This whole film had a real 90s feel, and I think we've talked in the past about this sort of 30-year generational, people have grown up now and they're looking back to the time.
Well, they all dress like the 90s. Sorry to interrupt you, but actually the costuming is all 90s because the mom's wearing very pear-shaped sort of bootleg jeans, and Katie's wearing kind of slightly flared,
grungy,
and everything she's wearing is exactly what the 90s looked like.
Yeah, so I think it's that whole piece that we're seeing, right? We've gone through the 80s renaissance through Stranger Things, and now we are getting to the 90s nostalgia. But I guess the piece that pushed it over the edge for me visually was the introduction of real photographs of families and real memes of cats, and there was a lot of real photographic elements in the mix of this animated style that was more hand-drawn and then mixed in with this really great CGI animated style. I just think that real element, I didn't understand. The logic of it failed for me. It didn't land. It's like I have the same issue with WALL-E. in the movie. So my one criticism of WALL-E...
When they switch to live action.
Yeah, they have the live action, Fred Willard.
Yeah.
He's the cut-ins. And then eventually you see the transition from real people into CGI people. Again, the logic, it didn't land for me. A place where it's very strange, but I kind of like it, is in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where Margot Robbie is watching the real Sharon Tate on screen. It's just such a bonkers idea that it just sort of works because it's sort of evoking the spirit of her. But yeah, so that would be my issue with the visuals of the Mitchells versus the Machines. That's what pushed it for me.
There's a really small observation on my part. I thought the film was fine. Like, I enjoyed it plenty. We actually watched it over 2 nights, which I know isn't ideal, but we obviously were sufficiently tired and didn't care enough that we were prepared to stop it with 40 minutes to go and then resume next. It's fine. I just thought it was super fun. I quite liked looking at the connections with the films that we were going to compare it to. But I really, really did enjoy watching Maya Rudolph and her animated character looking like Maya Rudolph and Danny McBride looking like Danny McBride. And I don't know the kid actors, so I didn't have that same sort of affiliation there. But there was something really quite charming. And that actually was one of the few things that gave me pause for thought after watching the film. You know, sometimes you can watch a film, I have to say, like iRobot, and you forget about it forever thereafter. But, and we'll get on to that. But with this one, I did sort of think, I wonder which came first, you know. Clearly, they cast Maya Rudolph and then they animated the character to look like her. Or they decided, here's who we want in it, and then we'll get... I don't know. Yeah, it was a very small wandering...
I like that. And I think we're seeing more and more of that with animated characters mimicking or taking on attributes of their voice counterparts. And I guess it's a mixture of... it's a mixture of the Andy Serkis, Gollum influence of motion cap and then actually using his facial expressions to imbue the character with that realness.
But they wouldn't have mocapped this film, hey? Because I was thinking about A Scanner Darkly with Keanu Reeves looking like Keanu Reeves, right? Am I right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I was thinking, no, this won't have been, what is it?
Rotoscoping,
and whatnot. So...
I just think it's more the influence of that, how people have started to appreciate that a voice actor is not just a voice actor anymore.
That's right.
There is an opportunity to bring themselves physically into it.
Yes, right.
So, I guess it's just more looking at the whakapapa of that kind of
and that is
trend.
That is a newish thing. Apart from Richard Linklater being like amazing in 2007 or 2006, but yeah.
Well, didn't he make that other movie as well with Robert Downey Jr.? Waking Life? Is it?
Oh yes.
Is that earlier? That was earlier than Scanner Darkly.
It's 2004 or something.
It's definitely Richard Linklater. I have never seen it, so I couldn't speak to Robert Downey Jr. being in it. Scanner Darkly was great. Was that a Philip K. Dick story?
Yes.
Well? Yeah, it was definitely like not a film that you go and you go, oh, that was really satisfying. I know exactly what happened.
No.
But as an experience,
yes,
it was quite wonderful.
I'm going to watch that again.
I think it's interesting you guys bring up the point of almost like ink actors, right? Like animated characters who are made to look and sound like their real life counterparts. Because I think a lot of this has been bleeding into like live action films as well. You now have a lot of movies use CGI and a whole bunch of technologies to bring either people back from the dead, or from, in the case of, for example, The Mandalorian, taking characters that we know and love, like Luke Skywalker, and de-aging Mark Hamill, who's now in his 60s, to look like he was back in his 30s.
Yeah, right.
And it just really messes with your mind. And of course, have you guys seen that movie, The Congress, with Robin Wright?
No.
It's a wonderful little movie.
I have seen it now you mention it, but I remember seeing it, I think, at the Academy, and it was
Right,
very
it was showing
strange.
at the Academy.
And it was a very obscure film.
Yes.
And I probably didn't love it, but I don't remember anything else.
I think it's very prescient. So Jeremy, The Congress is about Robin Wright playing a Robin Wright-esque character. She's an actress who she signs away her likeness to be digitally replicated for any movie from here on out, and she gets a large paycheck for it. And it's all about the importance of being and of what having an image of yourself actually represents. And of course, then she goes into this weird, completely animated dreamscape, and it gets really weird.
Oh, Oh, that's the bit I didn't like. Because
Yes.
I don't like it when tone changes and so, right, she's like going through water and under the sea and it's all animated. And that's when I go, this is a silly film. I will put up with a whole lot of sci-fi nonsense, but then you'll get to a point where I'll go, like with whatever it was that we were talking about in the last film with the Godzilla versus Kong. And that's what makes this completely unbelievable.
It's from the director of what's it called, Waltz with Bashir.
Oh, yeah, that's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
That's right.
And so it was his follow-up and using a lot of the same animation styles and rotoscoping as well. Yeah.
And a very clever conceit. In
Yes.
fact, I would argue the first half is the clever conceit because it is the almost sci-fi but could really happen, might really happen. But then...
And is happening right now. When Peter Cushing appeared in Rogue One, you're like, wait a minute, he died 30 years ago.
Yeah, right.
It's interesting. My mind's going to the Imaginarium of Doctor Parnassus, the Terry Gilliam film. It was also Heath Ledger's last movie. And they filmed all of the real world elements, and then when he went into the Imaginarium, they were going to go film that on a green screen. So then they cast 3 different actors to play him. And that movie, for me, that really worked. And I think we talked a bit about The Five Bloods, or Sarah's When You Were Away. We had another guest then, Billy joined us, Billy Revel. And in that film, when they go back in time, they don't de-age them.
Yeah.
They just have them as their older selves, as a kind of commentary. And I just think those choices are far more interesting than this de-aging process we're
Like
seeing.
Scorsese did with The Irishman.
It's strange. I haven't actually seen The Irishman, and that's part of my reason is I don't want to be creeped out by... Well, not creeped out, just frustrated. Princess Leia at the end of Rogue One, strange. I've seen that scene with Luke Skywalker. I don't even know what's in Mandalorian.
Mandalorian, last episode.
Very strange.
Very strange.
And I'm just finding that a lot of the stuff. Make a different choice.
How they shot it with Mandalorian, it would have been completely fine if Luke's face was hidden under his cloak this whole time. You know who he is, right? But they had to show you we have the tech to actually do this.
Yeah.
And it is still that uncanny valley. Like, I don't think they've got it to a point where your human eyes can look at it and think, I am completely okay with this.
Yes, and that you're suspending your disbelief or your belief or whatever. Because I do wonder whether you're right about the human eyes and how you can't make the brain feel differently when we're looking at these things. And I wonder whether contextually, watching Carrie Fisher, there was this feeling of, oh, how lovely, as well as, oh, how sad, because we knew she was dead and we knew it was a construct. But then we're talking, and so the same goes with Peter Cushing, but then the de-aging thing. Robert De Niro, God bless him, is not yet passed. So watching him younger, is that just kind of weird and my brain can't compute it because I've seen him older? You know what I mean?
The deep fake technology that I see on YouTube though is amazing. I don't understand how that's different and why they don't use that, because that's where there's a whole trend on YouTube where people are superimposing faces over people. So for instance, Bill Hader's having an interview with Jimmy Fallon and he's pretending to be Jack Nicholson or Tom Cruise, and then they've superimposed that actor's face, and it looks like they're kind of sitting there. It's very, very strange.
Yes, but whose face is doing the acting?
Bill Hader's face is doing the acting, and they've somehow
the computer algorithm is recognizing that as another actor's face.
Right.
Yeah, and so I wonder if they could do something like that. It's far more compelling and interesting, and I think if they got somebody to do an impression of those people for those scenes and use that technology.
Yeah, but Scorsese, look, Uncle Marty, he's not going to go, hey, Bobby, I'll use you for certain scenes in this film, but when we go back in time, I've got this, thanks, don't worry about it.
But I've also seen them take scenes like that and then correct them, quote unquote, with the deep fake of their younger face, and it works so much better. So I don't understand the technology of deep fake, and it's different. But let's segue, because I think technology, special effects that hold up or don't hold
Terminator
up.
2!
30
Oh, it holds
up. 30 years old and it holds up.
You talk about the 90s, my goodness.
90s connection as well.
It really does hold up. That film has been in my top 10 films. So back in the 90s, I remember someone saying to me, oh, so you like movies? What's in your top 10 films? And I promise you, Terminator 2 was in that top 10 and still is. Now, partly that's because I'm not great at updating my list because I don't know what to let go of. But genuinely, it is timeless and it doesn't date. I mean, I'm sure there are aspects that date, but not really.
I think some of the... So watching it last night, some of the CGI is a little iffy. Like, when the T-1000 runs... I understand that this was the first time people had actually animated human movements in a CG object. And so for that alone is incredible. He does look pretty stiff, but then he is a robot, so okay, I'll give him that.
Yeah, I think it holds up really, really well.
Just some of the effects, like it's very obvious that it is CGI, but how the beautiful thing about it...
Wait, do you mean to say you can't make liquid nitrogen come together and create a human form? But yes, it's CGI.
I guess the beautiful thing about it is, just like in Jurassic Park, which came out, 2 years later?
Yeah.
Like they
also
do...
CGI, Jeremy, just so you know.
No. My childhood. But they are so good at using real-life elements to spruce up the CGI so that your brain is continuously jumping between physical, fake. And the lighting is all physical. And so much of everything around it is physical. So when there is a CGI object, it just doesn't jump out at you the way, for example, if you see a big old Marvel movie now and everything is animated and your brain just says, this is a cartoon and I don't care as much.
And I know you're being facetious, but just to back up what William said, there's parts in that movie where the liquid metal is not CGI. There's like right at the end when the TX-1000, is that what it's called, is all broken up into frozen pieces, and then it starts to melt again. And then there's it's like mercury, right?
Oh, wait,
like coming
so
together. They use real elements.
Is that mercury? What am I calling liquid nitrogen?
Well, liquid metal.
Yeah, it's some magic alloy.
Polyalloy something.
Well, no, that's the bit I mean. So wait, is that not CGI?
Well, there's a mixture of CGI, but then at the end, that part is... I mean, it must be mercury. It looks like mercury to me.
Yeah.
It's
they've reversed.
Amazing.
So cool.
It's like they've just poured a thing of mercury and then they've just reversed the footage and it all comes back together.
Right.
Again.
So you talk about the brain being able to cope with fake, not fake, but of course the other most brilliant thing is the fact that by that stage in the movie, we know that when you see innocuous little drips of liquid mercury or whatever the heck it is,
there's going to be trouble.
There's going to be trouble. And so our fear comes from actually what we understand is going on, not so much the fact that, here's a machine coming round the corner.
I think this is interesting. Like I've talked about this before, but Tarantino talks about this, right? He's not against CGI, but he says when you see CGI, you know it's CGI, so you know how the trick is done. And movie magic is not knowing how it's done. And I always love seeing a film where I'm like, I don't know how they did that. And I think about Mad Max Fury Road. There is stuff in that movie. I don't know how they did it. And there's stuff in Terminator 2. I don't know how they did some of that stuff. And it's so much more satisfying than, like you say, William, the Marvel or the Transformers was for me, the big write-off. I was like,
hey kids. Do you like to see metal? Yeah. I'm going to show you some metal.
Yeah, crashing into other metal and destroying cities.
I tell you, the thing for me with Terminator 2, and I may have said this in one of our 50 previous podcasts, nothing thrills me more, and that is not hyperbole, than the conceit of a character morphing into another character so that you do not know who is legit. Years ago, I saw what I think is a Clive Barker film, Shocker. Is Shocker Clive Barker? For some reason nobody in the world else seems to have seen it. No, it's Wes Craven. So, Shocker is basically a film, it's a horror film about a guy on death row who is electrocuted and his spirit, or soul, or whatever, goes through the electrocution first the person who presses the button, who goes off and kills people, and then when they interact with the next person, the spirit goes into the next body, and so on and so forth. So it's just like that most awesome scene of many in Terminator 2, where Aunt So-and-so with the frizzy hair may or may not already be have the Terminator having morphed into her. Do you know what I mean? So that you don't really know where you stand. I love that stuff so much.
And he doesn't overuse it in the movie either. It's only a couple of moments.
Yes.
I also love that Janine, this kind of dowdy housewife frustrated with John Connor, is from Aliens. She's, what's her character's name? I want to say Perez, but I'm not quite sure.
Oh, is she one of the
She's the butch.
crew?
She's the butch,
I didn't make that connection.
Female badass.
Right.
Marine. And
right.
and she's also the mother in Titanic, the Irish mother telling her children the stories.
Oh,
the ship's
good
going down.
Lord, she is.
So
That
she
is
pops up.
Janine.
She pops up. Janine.
Oh my gosh, it's Janine,
She pops up.
everybody.
She's in a few Cameron movies, so she must be a friend, and
Yes.
he sort of gives her a role every now and again. One of the things I noticed this time, which is by far the least interesting thing about this film, but the SWAT team guy and when they go into the Skynet, whatever it's called, the place, and the guy who, I can't speak properly. He's got the weight and he's breathing fast and he's like, I can't hold this for much longer, and then the thing blows up. The SWAT team leader's like, get out, get out. He's the brother from Breaking Bad, the brother-in-law.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
I saw his eyes and I was like...
Dean Norris.
I mean, I don't know his name.
okay.
Yeah,
Whoa.
must be.
Yeah, I went and searched him up in IMDb. And
Dean
sure
Norris is
enough-
in Terminator 2.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, he's
whoa.
the leader of the SWAT crew.
Right.
Holy moly.
But yeah.
Speaking of effects and just astounding feats of movie magic, rewatching it this time, the effect that really got me was when Arnold tears off his arm. And how do they do it? How do they do it? Because the shot itself is seamless. There's no cutaway to tearing off the arm and you see the animatronic. You see a hand which looks like a human hand.
It's out of shot. It's out of shot.
Oh no! You do see the elbow. You see the elbow.
Oh, right.
So maybe the elbow connected to the shoulder is completely prosthetic, but it's moving in a way a human hand does. So my brain was saying, yes, this is Arnold's
like
hand.
it's on there.
Yeah, and then he tears his skin off like a glove, and it's all done in one take, and then there's the armature underneath. And then later on, of course, you have it slightly out of shot, and okay, so that's Arnold and the armature. But for that one scene, it's like, how did they do this?
Yeah. I'm astounded by Cameron's ability to set up a story. Like each of his movies, they have varying degrees of build-up. So Titanic, for instance, is like an hour and a half, but it's so satisfying. It's a really well-constructed arc. Same with Aliens. There's an hour of that movie when there's no aliens. It really just builds up all the pieces, and then it really pays it off. In this movie, it does it quite quickly. It gets into the action quite quickly. Like you very soon, you've got the TX-1000, and you're not quite sure who the baddie is at that point.
Yeah, that's
knocking
awesome.
on the door, and so you kind of already know John Connor's in danger.
It's kind of playing off the expectations of the first movie as well, because Arnold comes and a lot of it's reflecting the first movie.
And we've never met Robert Patrick before, and probably haven't really seen him in many movies. So
and he's very charismatic as a
exactly,
character.
and he's nice looking. So there's nothing to make us think maybe he's a baddie.
Yeah, and so it's a really great setup. But you've got the prologue that kind of is a recap of the first movie, or to get us in, and then there's that wonderful title sequence of a burning playground, and it struck me of like, this is really about loss of childhood, loss of innocence, loss of family. Like there's a lot of meta kind of narrative about the world blowing up, but then it's all very kind of micro, and with Sarah and her son and this father figure with Arnold. Like it's a really beautifully set up kind of tone. And then you've got 5 characters. You've got the Arnold Schwarzenegger character, you've got the TX-1000 character, you've got little John Connor, you've got Sarah Connor Institution, and you've got the Skynet.
Yeah, Miles Dyson.
Character. Like it's a really that could just be a mess, and it's just you get the things when you need to get the things, and that whole first act of the movie is about them coming together, and it culminates with that great escape from the institution. But I'm in awe of this movie. It's so good.
You know the old Greek myth of Sibyl. And Sibyl was the prophetess who said to everybody, the robots are going to take over the world, and nobody believed her. And so Sarah Connor has that classic, and I'm constantly struck by this, has that really classic, horrible dilemma of, I sound completely mad, and if anyone said it to us in our daily life right now, we would go, oh really? Oh dear, oh well, and yet she was absolutely true, but of course it's just so discreditable. And that's also what makes things so utterly frightening. And of course it's also a trope, isn't it? That it's the maddest in society who actually know what is going on.
It's 12 Monkeys. That comes out around about this time
95,
as well, eh?
I think.
Oh, 95,
Yeah.
so a bit further on. But yeah, that's the same thing, isn't it? Bruce Willis comes back from the future and ends up in an institution.
Of course.
Yeah, and I was trying to think about the politics of Sarah Connor being an institution and what that kind of said. And you've got a couple of shots of kind of like the shuffling moving inmate. But on a whole, I think the fact that we empathise with Sarah Connor is, I think it's okay.
Yeah, but you see, well, it is, but you see also we as the audience, we are allowed to see what's really going on. So we're not just dealing with somebody who's spouting this nonsense in inverted commas. Now, when did The Matrix come out?
99. So
Oh,
9 years
ages later. Okay, but you've got a similar sort of scenario, right? With somebody who's like, oh, there's this thing. Because we watched recently that documentary, The Glitch in the Matrix, which is actually a really disturbing, you should totally watch it, a really disturbing documentary about real life world right now, where there are people who believe that we are living in a matrix, and so various dreadful things are happening because people are under the, I would like to say, misapprehension, but then maybe I'm just one of the blind, who doesn't really realize. But that's the thing. Sarah Connor as a character was proven to be right. Well, actually, no, she wasn't. Because the world didn't end.
Yeah.
So
there's
actually,
no paper law we make.
No, there's no proof, actually, is there? That's the problem. If you stop something terrible from happening, who's even going to know?
But that's her arc, right? I think that's why I love this film, the way they set up each of their characters. They've all got... I mean, John Connor is kind of the one that... He's like the heart, and he's the voice of reason in the film. And it's Sarah Connor and the Terminator that change.
Yeah.
Sarah Connor realizes actually... there's that wonderful... devastating scene where she reaches out to John and he jumps into her arms to hug her and she's feeling him for bullet wounds, and I think that's her arc, right? She realizes that she's missing out on what matters because she's so obsessed with the future.
Sure.
And I just, it's one of the best transitions from a first to a second movie. You see Sarah Connor go from this lovely young girl to this bitter, embattled,
hardened
woman and
survivor.
So, and then you've got the Arnold Schwarzenegger change as well. He goes from, he's really scary in that first movie. That first film, I love. Part of me actually loves the first Terminator more, not because it's a better film, but because I love what they did on such a small budget. And it really is a horror kind of chase movie because he's terrifying. But yeah, I just really love that switch they play with. And of course, the Terminator can learn by the end of it. And one of the greatest symbols with the thumb going into the fire.
It's iconic. It really is iconic. The subverting of expectations is interesting. I feel like it happens way more now. But the very fact that, oh my goodness, he's walking down the corridor and suddenly we think he's going to shoot him and it turns out, woohoo, reveal he's a goodie, blah. And on a much smaller level, in the Mitchells versus the Machines, of course, you've got the robots who are kind of bad, or are they good, or are they bad? But moreover, in iRobot, which we haven't actually started to talk about yet.
Yeah, we were going to compare Mitchells versus the Machines with iRobot because there's much connections with it as well.
A lot of parallels between the two.
And
films.
we can still draw a few
comparisons.
comparisons.
It's just that it's such
and of course,
not a superior film to
No,
T2.
it isn't at all. It's a totally forgettable film. And to the extent that I had seen it and then forgot why I had no interest in seeing it again until I watched it again and went, oh, that's why. But again, you do at least have the subverting the expectations because the central robot is set up, isn't he, to be a baddie?
Yes.
And then he isn't. And now I can't even remember if he is again or not, and it's a double cross. He's not, is he?
Alan Tudyk, because he's always a goodie through the whole thing. And he was programmed by James Cromwell to be the one good robot, because the central processing unit had controlled everyone.
You know James Cromwell's going to be the baddie. Unless he's in Babe, he's always going to be the baddie.
Yeah.
As it said in the poster, one man saw it coming. It was James Cromwell, not Will Smith.
Oh, that's true. But I tell you, so some things that I noticed, because when I thought I was going to be watching iRobot for a reason, I found some connections with the Mitchells versus the Machines.
For jumping in.
Both of them have blue blood. Did you notice?
No.
Yes, in Mitchells versus the Machines, those robots, when they get smushed, they have blue goo.
Oh, that's cool.
And
that's
they
to get around,
also
so they can get around the American censorship laws.
Oh, around red blood?
Yeah, you have to change it to black or blue when you have it in a trailer.
Wow, that's fascinating.
So if you ever see a trailer, like one of my favourite examples is in Kill Bill, I was always wondering why she's got black ink all over her yellow jumpsuit, and then you watch the movie, it's like, it's black, it changed to black.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, so blue blood, I don't think they mean it in like somebody who was born into nobility.
Although, with Olivia Colman playing the big bad.
Yeah.
Oh, I do want to talk about that. So first of all, I love Olivia Colman. And I would be inclined to say she can do no wrong. And I wouldn't say that she did wrong in Mitchell versus the Machines, but I didn't buy a single line of dialogue.
Really?
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know why.
Yeah, I agree.
In a way, she has the haughtiness and she has the voice and the talent. And I didn't. I felt like she was reading from a script.
I can't believe I'm about to say this, but she wasn't a Cardi B in what was it, Lego Movie 2?
Yeah.
Like Cardi B out-voiced Olivia Colman.
No, Lego Movie 2 was no, that wasn't Cardi B.
Oh, wasn't it? Oh no, Tiffany Haddish.
Yes.
Tiffany Haddish. Oh my gosh!
I mean,
they're both such big personalities.
I did quite like the fact that she did somewhat sound like Hal from 2001: A Space Odyssey. But I didn't buy her as Pal. Obviously, that's where it comes from, right?
But you didn't like her freak out moment?
She's
like,
I liked it when she went
put
in
me
the
on the
water.
table.
Oh yeah, no, that was fine. But do you know what I mean? It was
Yeah,
like the
I
whole
can see.
time I'm listening to Olivia and it's not working.
I was
which
spending the
is
whole
weird.
time trying to figure out who she was. Like, I know their voice. It's not Helen Mirren. It's not Helena Bonham Carter. And I was like, I know who it is. And then by the end of the movie,
The
I was
third
like,
royal.
Yeah, it's Olivia Colman.
It felt a little bit too much like she's really hot right now. And look, I feel terrible saying that. And Olivia, if you're listening, we still think you are the superlative actor of this generation.
Look at me! Don't look at me!
So the robots,
Nice.
obviously, the way the robots look to the untrained eye, such as
I mean,
mine,
that's very, very planned.
pointed.
Right? It's,
It's
an iRobot reference almost.
The
And-
blue and the red lights as well.
Yeah.
And the way that they land is just like the Terminator's land, but it's also like the iRobot's land, and it's like the Mitchell machine lands.
And there's a central building in iRobot, isn't there? There's kind of I remember there's like the center point of all the robots.
Will Smith needs to plunge in his robot arm to like destroy everything.
Will Smith's so annoying in this film, and I've got a lot of time for Will Smith, like probably too much time. And as time goes on, I should probably have less. But I found him really arrogant. I hate the way he swings in that ridiculous trench coat and those potentially leather trousers that are quite flared. Anyway, whatever. I hate the way he swings into buildings and that, and he's all like, they can't be trusted because they made a bad call based on science, dude.
Based on probability.
Sheesh, exactly. 35%, 11%. What do you want? I didn't like it.
I love Will Smith, and I love him in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I love him publicly. I love him in not Mission Impossible, Men in Black.
I love him in Enemy of the State.
Independence Day.
But then
He, like,
everything-
boys that movie.
Everything from 2000 onwards, his movies, bleh. Like
You don't
Hancock
like him in
is
Concussion?
terrible. Concussion, Hancock,
I thought he did well in
7
Concussion.
pounds.
7 pounds. Was After Earth? I want to call it Afterbirth. And what else has he done? Just lots of
That awful Christmas Carol ripoff movie with Helen Mirren and Keira Knightley and Michael Pena.
Oh, I haven't seen
Oh,
it.
he was
Yeah.
good in 6 Degrees of Separation, but admittedly, I think
That was the
90s.
90s. Yeah, Hitch is another terrible one.
Oh,
Anyways.
now you mention it, not such a great guy. But I really didn't enjoy him in this at all, and I thought his goatee was terrible. It's like you either have a goatee or you don't. And I don't like the phrase bum fluff. You know, when you talk pejoratively about people who aren't able to grow a proper beard, but it just looked scruffy.
But was he more or less annoying compared to Shia LaBeouf?
Oh, well, now bless Shia LaBeouf.
Shia LaBeouf.
Now bless Shia LaBeouf. I was super surprised to see him because I thought he was already famoso by then, but he wasn't yet famous.
Is he in that movie?
Yes,
his
he's the
sidekick for a long
kid.
while.
He's the kid.
I remember
who's
him
really
in Charlie's
annoying.
Angels too.
But he then, of course, within 4 years or something, Shia LaBeouf's in Transformers,
Yeah.
and he's like a big guy. So I mean, he's fine. He's just a kind of a kid with chutzpah. You know what I mean?
And also, I always remember Chi McBride being the police chief, right, in iRobot. And he has his line that he says in everything, including Pushing Daisies, "Oh, hell no," before he blows the robot away.
Let's segue back then to Terminator 2, because there are some great catchphrases in this film that have become part of the zeitgeist.
Yes.
And they've, hasta la vista, baby, and I mean, it's so cool. And I was thinking about James Cameron talking about the creation of Avatar sequels. And he's got his team of writers, and he said to them, we are not going to write a sequel until we understand what made the first Avatar so successful. And he said, Yes, there's a great. You can pull a face.
I am
Sarah,
pulling the face.
but that is still the most. That is the biggest.
Highest grossing movie. Yeah,
still the highest grossing movie. It was dethroned, and then it opened in China, and it's reclaimed its throne.
Yes, but it's only because it was the first time we'd seen anything that looked like that. You can only do that once.
No, I disagree.
Okay.
I didn't love Avatar when I first saw it. I've gone back and rewatched it for the episode we did with our friends Adam Spedding and Sinead Fitzgerald, but we I really enjoyed it, and I think, what am I waffling on about? Avatar. So, what he said is that what they figured out was it wasn't just a good story with some good themes about unobtainium and whatnot.
Good theme?
It wasn't just a good story with good themes and good actors.
Good theme.
Sam Worthlessnington.
Look, okay, good themes. There's an indigenous storyline with capitalism and commercialism in that movie. But the third element is that it's just a beautiful film to look at, and you want to go to that place. And that was what he talked about, making the sequels. They kept coming up with good stories, good themes, but they weren't interesting places to go to, and so they scrapped that idea. And I think about Terminator 2. You've got the story, you've got the themes, but there's some cool stuff in this movie.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a cool movie. The scene with him putting the glasses on, there's moment after moment of just cool stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how did you come up with this?
And
You
thank
guys are
heavens
cool.
for those lighter moments as well, right? Because it's really tense.
It is.
And it's potentially, I was thinking recently about horror films that, for me, that work because they could potentially happen, and ones that wouldn't work because I wouldn't go to a cabin in the woods, or I'll steer clear of doing a seance, right? But the whole kind of, if robots apocalypsed the world and we were subjected to a nuclear, that's very, very frightening stuff.
That scene is amazing.
The one in the playground?
It is
effects,
absolutely petrifying.
And apparently, I was reading online that people have said that is one of the most realistic depictions of a nuclear blast ever put to film. And people still talk about how terrifying it is.
Yeah.
It is still terrifying.
Because the miniature work in that scene is so good. And I was reading they were just using air cannons to to pulverize these buildings and cars and stuff.
And just the scene of her screaming with her
It's
the
and also
skeleton.
you say 1991, you realise throughout the 80s we thought that we were going to die by nuclear war.
Right.
Like, I grew up through that time, and in school and everything, we would watch Threads, and the Cold War was kind of still on. It must have been still on till 89, right? And so nuclear war felt like a genuine threat.
Wow.
And so 91, that stuff's still visceral.
I think it's so interesting comparing T2 to the Mitchells vs. Machines in terms of their views of robo-apocalypses, right? Whereas Terminator 2 is all about the nuclear hellfire, and then what happens later with evil robot armies firing lasers. And then the Mitchells is all about big tech, right? It's about invasion of privacy, it's about Wi-Fi, it's about how entrenched technology is in every single part of our lives, and how it reflects so poorly on just being connected even when you're within a family, right? Because the original, well, not the original, when it was with Sony Pictures, the title was going to be Connected, which is it's not a very good title, but you understand why, because it's about the connection between the family and the connection between the internet and all that. I think Mitchell's vs. Machines is a way better title, but the whole the whole theme of the movie is about how technology at the same time divides us, as well as simultaneously keeps us together. I do like how the tech aspect is not too demonized, right? There's a lot of good that can come out from tech. And so much of the emotional climax of the movie is about Katie's dad figuring out what his daughter is actually good at, and how it can be something meaningful, even though he himself is a technophobe.
Yeah, but all she's okay, I'm going to get in trouble here, but all she's good at is making futuristic versions of TikToks and entertaining people.
But that's amazing, right? You see in that scene later on the head of the Power Corporation, and he's watching her videos. And it's getting millions of views. And
but is that valuable?
I think so. I was thinking back to one of my students from prior years, who Katie just reminded me so much of this little guy. He's graduated now. Hopefully he's doing editing. But he did terribly at school. He wasn't very popular, but he was a very, very, very good editor. And he would share with me these videos he did with his friends online. And they were of such a beautiful, high precision quality. And it's like, what are you doing at school? You should be doing this stuff and making tons of money.
Sure.
And so I think there is real worth that
That's
stuff.
true.
And the movie identifying that as a good thing rather than a bad thing, I thought was
true.
really progressive.
Yeah, that's true.
Brilliant. Okay, let's do just final thoughts. Quick whip around. Sarah, do you want to start us off?
We all know how I feel about Terminator 2. What I would say about the Mitchells versus the Machines and a little bit iRobot, I do really appreciate when films take technology on head on. I really enjoyed a lot of the digs that Mitchells versus the Machines made about the current state of affairs around technology. Totally hear what you say, William, about the fact that ultimately we need it and we hate it in almost equal amounts, and da-da-da-da-da. It has purpose as well as dreadfulness. But I really enjoy that. And of course with iRobot, you've got this idea that wouldn't life be awesome if every family was given their own robot to do certain chores? Because to some extent, yes, it totally would. People would be freed up to spend time with one another. But it's interesting how then they go, well, this is how it could all go terribly wrong. And that's why we will be going off the grid and, yeah, that's right, no more technology. Can you imagine? No. And so here we are.
Driving down dark roads at night.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. William?
Yeah, Terminator 2, awesome. Although rewatching it, I do find Edward Furlong to be increasingly annoying. Just his timbre in his voice, his timbre.
Whiny.
Excuse me, did you call moi? Moi? Hey, Terminator! Yeah, it's like, oh, don't like this kid. He's gonna be the savior of humanity. But Arnold, a career performance, I would say, from him. Like, he doesn't get enough credit for what he does. It's incredible. You know, he's funny, he's scary, he's imposing, he's the dad. Super good stuff. And of course, the effects and the story, awesome. Mitchell's, yeah, again, I was kind of let down by it, but there's a lot of good in this movie. Things we haven't really touched upon. I love the relationship between Katie and her brother Aaron. Like, you don't see this in animated
That's
movies
true.
of
You don't
siblings.
see it in any movies.
In any movies of siblings
Getting
who
on.
get on and love each other and support each other. There's been a lot of writing online about the fact that Katie is, you know, she is queer. And I thought at the end that was super cool. And it's not something they plonk at the end to get brownie points. It's scattered throughout the movie.
Yeah.
And of course, just the visuals of this movie, they're overwhelming, but in a really good way. And I can't wait to see what the studio does next, because I think more so than Pixar or any of the other big studios, like these guys, they want to do new stuff, and it's very, very exciting.
Cool. And I guess my biggest takeaway from rewatching Terminator 2 and watching The Mitchells versus the Machines is the structure of the film. And I guess I alluded to it right at the start of our chat. I crave for films that are really tightly woven and put together. And I guess there is a huge amount of work and process that has to go into that. And I hope that our online platforms find a way that can achieve that. Pixar does it really well with their think tank kind of model, where they really challenge an idea and get it to its most tightest
box.
Yeah, like the tightest kind of situation. And I'm looking forward to seeing. I genuinely am looking forward to Avatar 2, and I never thought I would have said that 10 years ago when that movie came out. And so yeah, I hope that I'm just getting a little bit sick of Netflix movies that feel a little bit boring because they're not on it in the same way that a movie had to be 30 years ago, like Terminator 2. Thank you for listening to another episode of Cinema in Context. If you enjoyed our podcast, then please share it with your film-loving friends. You can listen to Cinema in Context through multiple platforms like SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Radio Public, and Amazon Music. And you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram, which are great places to let us know what you think of this episode or give us suggestions for future films to discuss and compare. Look out for our next episode in a month's time, and until then,
No ho'o mai!